Coming off the commercial success and critical acclaim of Ocarina of Time, Nintendo wanted to further capitalize on all the work they'd put in to create it. Shigeru Miyamoto requested that designer Eiji Aonuma make a revamped version of the game, increasing the difficulty and rearranging the dungeons. Although this would later come to be Master Quest on the GameCube version, Aonuma wasn't interested at the time. From there, an ultimatum was formed. I'm giving you a little over a year. Either you make this revamped version, or you make an entirely new game using everything that we created for Ocarina of Time. Aonuma looked at his options. 1, an easy way out, or 2, a seemingly impossible task. And he said, bet. He probably didn't say that, but he did choose to make an entirely new game, and the result was weird, unfiltered, different from anything Nintendo would normally create. It's a beautiful, rushed nightmare that under any other circumstances wouldn't have seen the light of day. It is The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask.
Hey, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so, and remember to leave a like on the video if you find yourself enjoying it. I'm trying out a new change of format in this episode, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. And with that out of the way, we need to talk about Majora's Mask, and the story goes something like this.
After the events of Ocarina of Time, Link leaves Hyrule in search of a mysterious friend. As he travels along, he's ambushed by 2 fairies and an ominous little creature. Skull Kid steals the Ocarina of Time and attempts to flee with Epona. Link jumps on, chasing them until he eventually falls into a seemingly endless pit. We reach the bottom of the pit and find Skull Kid. He uses his magic to transform us into a DIHU scrub. See? I told you this game was weird. The 2 fairies accompanying the Skull Kid are named Tattle and Tail. As Skull Kid leaves, Tattle goes over to bully you, getting left behind. Tattle is the replacement for Navi in this game. They've opted to remove the iconic, "Hey, listen!" replacing it with a bell sound. Believe it or not, I actually wish Tattle's sound was more obnoxious so it wasn't as easy to miss, but that's more of a personal thing. Tattle is written to have more personality than Navi, and that shines through within the first few minutes of the game. Sure, she's forced to stick with you, but that just allows for more character development, which is exactly what we see throughout Majora's Mask. I love Tattle. Anyways, as a DIHU scrub, Link can go into these flowers and jump out to glide a large distance. Once we reach the end of this area, Link finds a withered DIHU scrub, which Tattle notes looks similar to the way you do. This will be sort of important later. As we attempt to leave the area, a man comes from behind. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? The Happy Mask Salesman agrees to restore you to your former self if you get the Ocarina of Time back from Skull Kid and retrieve the mask that he stole from the salesman. He gives us 3 days to complete this task. Heading out the door, we start the game for real. Tattle tells us to go visit the Great Fairy in North Clocktown. If you stop there, you'll be instructed to find a missing stray fairy, but I found it beforehand simply by exploring. Oh, now's a good time to mention, this is my first time playing Majora's Mask, so this review is as honest as it can possibly get. The Great Fairy grants us magic, which allows us to shoot bubbles with our little DIHU scrub body. We can pop this balloon, then talk to this kid. He challenges you to find 5 members of his gang in exchange for the secret code to get to the nearby observatory. Once you find all of them, the main kid asks the others if they'd let you join their gang, to which they say no, because you aren't human. They then give you the code, allowing you to head on over to the observatory. Astral Observatory is home to one of the most beautiful Zelda tracks. It's a very colorful place and one of importance as it's here that we first gaze through the telescope. Looking through, we can see Skull Kid and also, oh my god, there's a moon crashing into the earth in the 3 days we have. Isn't because the masked salesman is leaving, it's because everyone is gonna die. We have to wait until the final minutes of the final day in order to face Skull Kid. He's waiting on top of the clock tower, which only opens its doors during the festival, which conveniently starts just as the world is going to end. As we wait for the doors to open, we can see and hear the moon get closer and closer. Finally, we can enter. Tail tells us swamp, mountain, ocean, canyon. Hurry. The 4 who are there, bring them here. Skull Kid responds violently and speeds up the moon falling. 5 minutes. Shooting him with our bubbles, he drops the ocarina. Picking it up, we can see a vision of Princess Zelda. It seems to be the moment Link left Hyrule. Zelda gives Link the Ocarina of Time, teaching him the Song of Time in case something should happen to him. Back to the present, as we go to play the ocarina, Deku Link grows an entire band section out of his back. Playing the Song of Time will reverse the flow of time and bring us back to the dawn of the first day. It's like nothing ever happened. Heading back to the Happy Mask Salesman, he teaches us the Song of Healing. He explains the song heals evil magic and troubled spirits, turning them into masks. We'll still have all the abilities of being a Deku Scrub should we choose to wear the mask again, only now it's just a mask. The salesman asks for the Skull Kid's mask like we promised, and I'm just gonna let this one play out. So, here we are. 3 days, looping over and over again until we can eventually save the land of Termina. As we head to the first dungeon, we find a carving of Skull Kid on a tree. Tattle recognizes it and tells us the story of how she and Tail first met the lonely child. I liked this scene a lot, despite how simple it is, and I think it does wonders for the story. Unfortunately, this is the only time anything like this happens throughout Majora's Mask. The areas leading up to Woodfall Temple are pretty cool. They're covered in this poison, which is dangerous. I don't really think any of this would be worth an explanation if we didn't see Kotake and Kume here. For those who don't remember, Kotake and Kume are Ganondorf's surrogate mothers and served as the boss for the Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time. In this world, they're good witches that help Link on his quest. But due to what you've learned from OOT, you might feel a little hesitant to assist them. This is just a neat little subversion of expectation, especially since you don't need to play Ocarina of Time to have that gut feeling that witches are bad. It's not really important to the story though, so let's get back to the sauce. Once we reach the Deku Palace, we learn that the Deku Princess went missing while heading to the Woodfall Temple. The king has wrongfully blamed a monkey for her disappearance. If we break in and speak to the monkey, he'll tell us the princess was kidnapped by the monsters at the temple, and teaches you the melody that raises the temple from the swamp, the Sonata of Awakening. It is also noted that this melody awakens those who have fallen into a deep sleep. Try not to forget that, you'll see why. Now we can head over to the temple. On our way there, we'll meet Kapora, who teaches us a song that allows us to warp between these stone statues, which we can unlock throughout the world. Afterwards, we reach the temple area, raise it from the swamp, and head inside. Here's my thing with Woodfall Temple. It's a very well-designed dungeon. Not very interesting, but well put together and engaging enough where I wouldn't view it as any less than a good experience. Curiously, Woodfall doesn't teach you how to do any dungeony things. You're expected to know everything already, and that isn't good. I really don't care that it's a sequel to Ocarina of Time. It's also a standalone title, and it's entirely possible that this could be someone's first Zelda experience. It's sort of baffling how anti-new player this is, especially for a Nintendo game. The boss of Woodfall Temple is Odolwa. He's fairly challenging as a Zelda boss in general, let alone the first of a game. The change in pace between this and literally any other Zelda game is insane, by the way. Defeating him, you collect a mask of his face and are warped out into this strange land. Aldolwa is a giant responsible for protecting Termina. He teaches you the Oath to Order, a song that will play every time we free a giant, and one that will only be played by us a single time in this entire game. Clearing the temple, we restore Woodfall to its peaceful, poison-free state. Find the princess and bring her back to the Deku King to save the monkey. It's so cool that our progress has a direct effect on the landscape. Let's play the Song of Time to return to the start of the first day and go back to Woodfall. Yep, it's like we did literally none of that. Those with a sharp eye might have also noticed that we lost all of our items and rupees as well. That's right. With the exception of important items and mask, the game takes literally everything away from you when you reset the cycle. Progress, items, rupees. The reason for this? Literally just to inconvenience you. It makes zero sense that I keep my other items if everything else returns to its original place. There is a bank where you can keep your rupees, which is nice, but the extra step just isn't necessary. This whole system wouldn't be an issue if I could save the game at any time I wanted, but oh wait, the only way to save in Majora's Mask is to either play the Song of Time and return to the start of the first day, or to find these owl statues and create a temporary save file after it forces you to quit, where that file also gets deleted once you load it. I get that some people think this is cool because it forces you to think more about your decisions, but saving the game shouldn't be part of those decisions, especially because Majora's Mask has the capability of crashing, which happened multiple times for me, even on emulator. Luckily, I didn't lose much progress when this happened, but it could have been even less. From this point in the game, we have to head into the mountains. We'll get past the first section just fine, but eventually you'll need bombs, which you can only get from buying the bomb bag in Clocktown's bomb shop. Once we get through, we can continue until we reach Goron Village. Here we'll meet Kapora, who guides us through this invisible area leading to a chest with the Lens of Truth. Heading back and using the lens to get across, you'll find a Goron ghost just sorta chillin'. His name is Darmani. He is a Goron hero similar to Darunia in Ocarina of Time. He realizes you can see him and challenges you to follow. Reaching his grave, we play the Song of Healing to free him of his sorrows. The Goron mask is unquestionably the most useful item in the game, as even when you're not doing Goron-specific things, you can just use it to get around faster. In the Goron village, you'll find the Goron elder's son crying because his dad hasn't come home yet. We can find his dad frozen in ice, which we thaw using hot spring water. Hot spring water is only found at Darmani's grave after pulling out the tombstone. This section, if you don't know what you're doing or where to go, takes absolutely forever to figure out on your own. I don't think it's particularly bad though, just a little bit of a hassle. When we find the Goron Elder, he'll attempt to teach us a song but can only remember the first half. Playing the first half for the child will prompt him to sing the rest of Goron's lullaby, teaching you the song. We need this to get to the next temple, just like the Sonata of Awakening, But how exactly is a lullaby going to help us get to the temple? Ah, yeah, of course, big invisible Goron. How could I be so foolish? Snowhead Temple is interesting for me because it actually took the longest for me to figure out. Not because it was too challenging or anything like that, I just kept overlooking or missing crucial parts of the puzzle, like the different colored sections in the spire which you're meant to punch, or even the switch that raises the platform. This dungeon introduces a repeated mini-boss with Wizrobe. The fight is nothing special, it doesn't even hold a candle to his iconic run at Smash and Splash 5. I really think Snowhead fumbled the bag a bit, especially with its final boss. It's this big, scary creature that you have to unfreeze in order to fight, and then to top it all off, its name is Goat. That's comedy gold. My issue with Goat is that this is quite possibly the worst designed boss fight I have ever played. Which, yeah, maybe I'm fortunate. It still sucked though. You just follow Goat around in your Goron form and run into him a bunch. The reason this fight sucks is because rather than creating a fun challenge, it's just, oh, he makes rocks fall from the ceiling, which completely block your path and stop your momentum. Oh, he shoots these beams at you. Don't get hit by them, otherwise they'll completely stop your momentum. Oh, it's time for the second phase. Make him throw bombs now too. Explosions stop your momentum. If you're going to design a boss that's sole purpose is to run while trying to stop you from running, then make the arena any shape other than a fucking circle. I'm just holding slightly left the entire time, waiting until a randomly generated rock doesn't block my path. That's not fun. Once you beat Goat and awaken him, most of the snow and ice melts around the villages. This area is really pretty. I think it should be noted that aside from Snowhead Temple being my least favorite dungeon, I still enjoyed this part of the game. No part of me wishes to experience it for the first time ever again though. Now we're meant to head to the following temple in the west, only we're blocked by a huge fence. We can't get through unless we have a horse, and, well, the most annoying part of this is that despite helping Skull Kid steal her, Tattle has zero clue where Epona is. So now with no direction, we have to find her again. I started talking to everyone I could in Clocktown. During this, I remembered the Bomber Gang wouldn't let us join their secret society because we were a Deku Scrub when we caught them, so I decided to catch them again as a human this time. Doing so, they invite you in and give you the Bomber's Notebook. This is essential for Majora's Mask, especially if you're aiming to 100% the game. Every time you interact with an NPC that you can help, Link jots them down in the notebook. Now you're able to see what time of day you can interact with them in order to cause a special event. Eventually, I made my way to the milk bar. Mr. Barton tells us that there's a boulder blocking his supply of milk from Romani Ranch, which is located somewhere south of Clocktown. Epona is a horse. If there's a ranch in the game, she's probably there. Heading south, you'll eventually find this big boulder. A guy will be there attempting to mine it away. If you wait until the final day or fast forward to it, he'll eventually break through. Here we find Epona as shown with this cutscene. If we talk to Romani, we'll find her in utter despair. She won't say anything, but still we jot her down in our notebook only to see that her events both happened during the first day. So we need a way to get to Romani Ranch on the first day, but the big boulder is blocking our path. Back in Goron Village, you can test out a powder keg from this big fella in order to open up the Goron race. You can then head back to the Goron, who will now let you buy powder kegs from him. The first one is free. I didn't learn this until later, but this also adds powder kegs to the bomb shop in Clocktown. If you're fortunate enough to figure this all out in the first cycle, then congrats. If you're like me, then you can pray that you can get Epona on the second day, watch the cutscene again, realize that you can't, reset the timeline, go to get a powder keg again, and uh-oh, it costs 100 rupees now. My wallet only holds 99. Get the wallet upgrade by depositing 200 rupees to the bank after trying like 15 other things, go back to buy the powder keg, open up Romani Ranch, watch the Epona cutscene again, and then complete the first part of Romani's side quest, relearn Epona song from her, and now we're good to continue the story.
I think that now would be a good time to mention that I saw a few complaints I was being too harsh when I criticized people who couldn't figure things out on their own in the Ocarina of Time episode. I've learned from my mistakes, and in order to right my wrongs, I decided to play the objectively harder Zelda game with zero help whatsoever for the first time. For those who I upset with my joke, where I equated individuals confused by OOT to children, literal shitting and pissing and kicking and screaming babies, I'm sorry. I mean, could you imagine not being able to enjoy video games or take a joke? That's gotta suck so bad. I mean, if I were in your shoes, I'd probably try to beat a Dark Souls game and get overly frustrated and just fucking hit things until the other wall in my basement looks like Swiss cheese. Only then, after conquering that gaming session, Dipey just absolutely full, would I feel ready to tackle the monolith of difficulty that is Ocarina of Time on the N64. I'm sorry I misjudged you, and if my apology wasn't enough, then here's a big ol' lollipop.
Now that we have Epona, we can head over to the next area. Here we can find a Zora named Macau floating in the water on the brink of death. You can push him to shore where he'll suddenly explain everything that's going on in song before falling, allowing you to use the Song of Healing to let him pass into the afterlife. This is one of the more emotional Song of Healing moments. Link even makes a grave for Macau. This is probably one of the better examples of this game not being able to pick between being serious and horrendously goofy. It's almost like there's a slider that can only move in two extremes. Despite this, I quite like this section of the game. We have to find and recover 7 Zora eggs which were laid by the lead singer in Macau's band, Lulu. For whatever reason, laying eggs makes her lose her voice, so it's important that we recover them so the band can perform. The Gerudo pirates have stolen 4 of them, and the eels have taken the other 3. Pirates' Hideout is an insanely frustrating stealth section. My least favorite part about this is actually how the items you find are managed. In this section, you're supposed to hit a switch with an arrow in order to move to the next area, but I didn't have arrows. So instead, I needed to use the Deku Mask to hit the switch or go all the way to the outside of the fortress and get arrows. I was lucky that this bubble somehow hit, because I wouldn't have had enough magic to try again. Once we make it through, we get the hookshot and collect the eggs, bringing them to the Marine Research Center. Once you collect them all, they hatch into little Zora tadpoles and orient themselves into a song called New Wave Bossa Nova. Nice. We can play this song to help Lulu get better, which summons a giant turtle to come out of his island shell. We can then get on top of him to head on over to the temple for this area. I love Great Bay Temple. Later dungeons in Zelda games typically struggle with keeping the difficulty appropriate for how far in the story you've gotten, but Majora's Mask absolutely nailed it here. Maybe that's a consequence of having a very short story, but it's a consequence that works well. The eyeball mini-boss absolutely sucks, and I have zero clue who at Nintendo felt that it was a good idea, but they should be fired or retire if it hasn't happened by now. Defeating him grants you ice arrows, which have been completely revamped for this game and are awesome. You can create platforms if you shoot them at the water and can turn certain enemies into blocks that you can stand on. Swimming around in the central whirlpool thing is a little annoying, but reversing the whirlpool by redirecting the water is such a cool concept. Honestly, this is on track to be one of my favorite Zelda dungeons so long as Nintendo doesn't mess up the... Do you remember how I feel about Goat's boss fight? That was a fight that was poorly designed in a sense that it's fairly boring. This is a boss fight that's poorly designed in the sense that it fucking sucks. You basically just hit Gyorg with an arrow, then put on the Zora mask to attack him. You have to be fairly particular with how you hit him though, because depending on where you stand, Gyorg will injure you by virtue of existing. He also tries to eat you and moves at ridiculous angles and speeds, so good luck. For some reason, ice arrows don't make platforms in Gyorg's boss area either, so not only does he suck, but he also removes functionality from an item that you just got, which makes him suck even more. Before anyone even says it, by the way, I don't dislike this fight because it's difficult. I chose to play Dark Souls 3 with nothing but my fists one time because I was bored. Gyorg just frustrates me to no end. Now we head to the east in pursuit of our final temple. Here we can find a strange man sitting on a cliff who instructs you to obtain the mask containing wandering spirits that can be found near the ranch. Heading over there, we have to win a horse race against the Gorman brothers, which gives us the Garo mask. We can return to the east to progress, eventually making it to this dried up area. While wearing the Garo mask, we can see these evil spirits and defeat them to learn more information. This section of the game took me way too long to figure out on my own, so here's what you're meant to do. In this back section, we'll find the composer ghost named Sharp. He will kill you, and you cannot hurt him. If you head back out to the beginning of the area, you'll find a giant sleeping skeleton. This is what took me forever to figure out, by the way. When you wake him up using the Sonata of Awakening, remember how I said you would need to remember that for later? You have to catch him in this track and hit him until he surrenders. You get this cool moment where Link relieves him of his duties, which will grant you the captain's hat. You can then use the captain's hat in the graveyard to open up this tomb, where you'll eventually fight an Iron Knuckle and find Sharp's brother Flat. He teaches you the Song of Storms, which you can then use to break the curse on Sharp, restoring the area. This causes the stream to power the horn on top of the house the Gibdo were surrounding earlier. This makes the Gibdo freak out and sink back into the ground. Once this happens, the little girl who lives in this house will routinely leave to explore the area. If she sees you, she will run back, but if you sneak past her, you can get inside. If you head downstairs, you'll be met with this guy who appears to be transforming into a Gibdo. If you play the Song of Healing, we'll free this man of his weird Gibdo curse, and... What have I been doing this whole time? You haven't been doing anything. You had a bad dream. You were just having a little nightmare. What a beautiful moment. She's lying to her father to protect him from the truth, even though it likely traumatized her. This game is beautiful at times, and no. Oh my god, please don't do this. Just silently put the item in my inventory this one time, please. Oh my god! Once we finish with all of that, we can head to the well and use the Gibdo mask to speak with the Gibdo down there. They ask you to fetch a specific item and allow you to go through if you bring it to them. All of the items you need can be found down here with the exception of the first two. Fetch quests are always boring, and this is no exception. It genuinely feels like this was added just to waste time. I really don't like it. When you reach the end of the well, you get the mirror shield, which has been upgraded to have this spooky face on it. Why? I don't know, it's cool. We need it to progress through the next section in the ruined Ikana castle. Although this mini dungeon is really short, it's still pretty cool and actually offers a bit of a challenge, which is always appreciated if you're going to make me go somewhere. Beating the fallen king of this castle, he'll teach you the Elegy of Emptiness. I'm gonna ramble for a few seconds here just so I can make the same joke that everyone else who has ever made a video about this game has, and oh my gosh, that's so creepy and weird and spooky. The Elegy of Emptiness creates a soulless statue from whatever mask you're wearing, and the results are very creepy. If you're one of the fortunate few who think this song sounds good, get used to hearing it because you have to play this song an unfathomable amount of times in the section leading up to our next dungeon, especially if you don't know what you're doing. The actual temple portion of Stone Tower is amazing. When you first get there, you're like, oh, okay, this is a really cool and well-designed dungeon. They did an awesome job with this. And then you get light arrows and flip the entire dungeon upside down, and it's still phenomenal. My only, and I mean only, complaint with this entire area is that I tried to flip the dungeon back around when I got stuck, and it wouldn't let me. I'd honestly prefer if the game let me be wrong in this way, and I feel like preventing me from doing this is not typical of Nintendo. Either way, the boss of the dungeon isn't very special, nothing crazy, nothing too annoying like Gyorg or Goat, it's just okay. You do get the giant mask right before the fight or during it in the 3DS version, which makes you a giant, but it can only be used in the boss room, so it's kind of pointless outside of this gimmick. We've finally beaten the 4 temples and gathered all the giants. Now we can go back to Clocktown and collect the moon tier from the Astral Observatory to gain access to the clock tower. The theme for Astral Observatory is one of the best in the game, as we discussed earlier. It invokes a sense of hope in a place that's centered around despair. Hearing this track, knowing that it'll be the last time, amplifies that feeling 100 times over. We go meet Skull Kid at the clock tower during the final minutes of the final day. We can play the Oath of Order for the first and only time in order to summon the giants and prevent the moon from falling. The following moments of the game are what make Majora's Mask so wonderful. As the giants stop the moon from falling, Skull Kid falls limp. Tattle tries to blame and punish the Skull Kid for his actions, but Tail explains that Skull Kid was just lonely and the power of the mask was too much for him to handle. Tattle doesn't seem to care, saying it's because he doesn't know his place, on top of having a weak will and no strength of heart. A voice then responds, "Certainly, he had far too many weaknesses to use my power," and suddenly the limp body of Skull Kid rises from the ground. The mask has been in control the whole time. The enemy of this game was never Skull Kid, it was Majora's Mask. What an awesome twist. The mask makes the moon continue to fall and we get teleported inside of the moon to try to stop it. It's a beautiful, peaceful place. Here a bunch of children run around with the masks of the 4 giants. If you collected all the masks, you can trade them with the children to unlock the Fierce Deity mask, but we're going to opt to beat this game as you would during a normal playthrough. At the foot of the tree sits a child wearing Majora's Mask. He asks, "Will you play with me? You have only weak masks, so you'll play? Well, shall we go?" This boss fight is insane and further showcases the game's inability to pick between being serious and goofy because Majora literally Fortnite emote moonwalks on you. The fight isn't that difficult, you just have to use your bow to stun him and then attack with your sword. Anytime you're not doing that, just hold out your shield. Defeating Majora, the moon will disintegrate and the people of Clocktown rejoice. Chills. Amazing. Link wakes up to see Skull Kid staring up at the giants. "You guys, you hadn't forgotten about me? You still thought of me as a friend." Tattle and Tail go over to comfort Skull Kid as the giants leave. Did you save me? I thought they didn't want to be friends with me, but they hadn't forgotten about me. Friends are a nice thing to have. Could you be my friend too?" He walks over, sniffs you, and says, "You have the same smell as the fairy kid who taught me that song in the woods." This, of course, is Saria's song, as we taught him in Ocarina of Time. The Happy Mask Salesman appears and says, "Shouldn't you be returning home as well?" Whenever there is a meeting, a parting is sure to follow. However, that parting need not last forever. Whether a parting be forever or merely a short time, that is up to you. You say goodbye as the game cuts to the credits, showing us the people of all the areas we visited having a great time. If you stop to complete any of the side quests, these masks in the outro will be replaced with a cutscene relevant to the event you helped create. We'll talk about side quests shortly. As the credits continue, we see the Deku Butler mourning over the dead Deku Scrub we found in the beginning of the game. If you follow the Deku Butler through the Deku Shrine, he'll say that your appearance as a Deku Scrub reminds him of his son. If you haven't figured it out by now, this is where the mask came from. It's such a small detail, and you'd probably miss it if you weren't paying attention. A somber touch to finish off this game. The screen pans to a carving on a stump of Link and Skull Kid and plays Saria's song before freezing on the end.
Okay, my thoughts on Majora's Mask are a little complicated. I think it struggles to decide what kind of game it wants to be most of the time. Is it about friendship? Is it about dread? I really can't tell you. I saw a few comments on the last episode saying that Ocarina of Time walked so Majora's Mask could run, and if you're looking at it purely from a gameplay perspective, I can understand that. But as an overall game and experience, it sometimes feels like Ocarina of Time is serving as more of a crutch than a predecessor. It's generally agreed that the side quests are what make Majora's Mask so amazing, but I don't think they're anything special. In fact, the only side quest that actually matters to me is Anju and Kafei's wedding, and that's probably because it's the only one that's fully fledged out. Multiple people touch their story, you have to dedicate a lot of time into helping them, and in the end you get to watch this beautiful moment where they finally reunite as the world is coming to an end. Seeing the result of you helping them in the end credits makes it feel way more impactful. In fact, it's the only time during these new scenes where I looked at it and thought, damn, I did that. Even then, I couldn't really enjoy it because the entire time I was thinking, if your significant other got turned into a child but kept their memory, is it chill to marry them? The answer is no, by the way. Tattle making an incest joke is not something that I needed or ever wanted.
If you go through the trouble of collecting all the masks, you can give them to the children wearing the giant's mask inside of the moon. Doing so, they each pose a different question. Your friends, what kind of people are they? I wonder, do those people think of you as a friend? The right thing, what is it? I wonder, if you do the right thing, does it really make everybody happy? What makes you happy? I wonder what makes you happy. Does it make others happy too? Your true face, what kind of face is it? I wonder, the face under the mask, is that your true face? These questions make the game feel more like its message was meant to be something around the lines of friendship and helping others, but if that's the case, then the dread surrounding this game takes away from that message. Once you help all the children, Majora will give you the Fierce Deity mask when you go to fight him. This mask is super cool, and it's meant to represent Link defeating Majora with the spirit and power of all the people he's helped along the way. Unfortunately, this mask makes the fight way too easy, almost laughably so. The extra 4 hours I spent unlocking all the masks just to do this really makes me feel like I wasted my time.
Now let's discuss the topic in the title, the darkest Zelda. Majora's Mask has been a feeding ground for creepypastas, video essays, all of those things. There's a ton of people who claim that it's their favorite Zelda simply because of how deep and twisted it is. My issue is that pretty much every Zelda has its dark elements to it. They're just often buried under vibrant colors and heroic tunes. You could even argue that other Zeldas carry significantly deeper meaning and stories, but Majora's Mask is a lot more forward with its themes, which is why it's often referred to as the darkest Zelda. Death is presented directly to the player. We see the people of Clocktown panic and grieve as the moon comes closer and closer to striking the earth. The threat of the moon and the timer are a constant reminder that people are in danger. That whole concept alone makes a game that I would otherwise view as just okay pretty amazing. I can absolutely understand someone picking Majora's Mask as their favorite entry into the series, but for does it hold up, I'm left in an awkward place. For me, part of what makes Majora's Mask so interesting is its deviation from the typical Zelda formula, but the issue is that it isn't distinctly unique enough where you'd be able to appreciate that without first playing the other games. I think the people who love Majora's Mask either played it first and wish every other Zelda game was more like it, or played every other Zelda game and love Majora's Mask because it's different. For me, the actual story and message of Majora's Mask is confusing and at times bleak. I enjoy some of the weird elements, but they also make it really hard to take this game seriously. Am I really supposed to feel bad for this character who's actively dying when they break out in song? And why are we ruining this heart-wrenching moment with a Zelda trope that could have been skipped just this once? There are many points throughout this game where your patience is tested, and at certain moments you will find yourself just standing still waiting for time to pass. I can already hear people telling me that it's my fault for not managing my time better, but when I'm playing a game for the first time and I have to be somewhere at a very specific moment, how could you expect me to explore and discover the other things that I could be doing? It adds a ton of replay value for sure, but on a first playthrough, it genuinely sucks. I enjoyed the new gameplay mechanics a lot, and the dungeon design was amazing for most areas, even though the bosses weren't anything special. I'd personally give Majora's Mask a 7.5 out of 10, but as you might know, sometimes the bad experiences are worth experiencing, and sometimes the good ones aren't worth all the trouble. So does Majora's Mask hold up? I think if you've played other Zelda games, you'll enjoy your time with it. It's definitely not for everyone, and it's in no way noob-friendly. Some people might get stressed with the clock mechanic, and its difficulty curve is on the higher end for a game of this style, but despite all that, I still think it's a fantastic entry to the Zelda series, and I enjoyed my time with it. Mostly. Thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you haven't already. As we're wrapping up this video, I just want to point out that my ratings for games often don't reflect how much I enjoy them. If this was strictly like, I like this game, I don't like this game, I'd just make you a tier list. You don't need a dedicated video for that. I saw a few comments falsely assume that Ocarina of Time is my favorite Zelda based on how highly I rated it, and I never wanted to leave that impression, and I'm sorry if it came off that way. We'll be covering my actual favorite Zelda in the near future, and I hope to see you there when I do. That's all for me, and I hope you have a fantastic day.